Psalm 27 stands as one of the most compelling and soul-stirring declarations of faith in all of Scripture, penned by King David. This psalm is a rich tapestry of trust, vulnerability, and unwavering courage in the face of overwhelming fear. In it, David shows us how to anchor our hearts in the presence of God, even when life feels unstable and uncertain. It begins with a bold proclamation. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? In these opening words, David reminds us who God is. He is light in our darkness. He is salvation in our struggles. He is a fortress when everything else falls apart. This is not merely poetic language. It's a declaration forged in the fire of adversity. David is not writing from a place of comfort. He is likely on the run, pursued by enemies, surrounded by threats. And yet, his confidence is not in his sword, his army, or his ability. It is in the character of God. When the wicked advance against me to devour me, it is my enemies and my foes who will stumble and fall. David doesn't pretend life is easy. He acknowledges the reality of conflict, betrayal, and danger. But instead of collapsing under fear, he reorients his heart toward trust. This is where courage is born, not in the absence of fear, but in the presence of faith. Psalm 27 teaches us that strength and courage don't come from pretending we're strong. They come from admitting we're weak and choosing to rely on a God who is infinitely stronger. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then I will be confident. This is extraordinary. Imagine having that kind of inner peace when chaos is swirling around you. David had learned the secret of stability, not to focus on the storm, but to keep his eyes on the one who calms it. Then the psalm shifts into something more intimate, more personal. David opens a window to his deepest longing. One thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord, and to seek him in his temple. In the midst of danger, David's greatest desire isn't safety. It's presence, the presence of God. His prayer is not just for protection, but for communion. He knows that true strength is not just surviving the battle. It's being with the Lord through it. In this one verse, we see a shift from external struggle to internal peace. David's heart is fixed on one thing, not riches, not revenge, not even victory. His heart is fixed on God himself. For in the day of trouble, he will keep me safe in his dwelling. He will hide me in the shelter of his sacred tent and set me high upon a rock. Here, David paints a picture of divine refuge. He trusts not in physical walls, but in spiritual shelter. He believes God will lift him above the chaos and give him firm ground beneath his feet. This is a powerful image for us today. When we feel surrounded by anxiety, by doubt, by pressure, we can run to the same shelter David did. But David is not naive. He knows that even the faithful experience hardship. That's why the psalm contains a raw and honest prayer. Hear my voice when I call, Lord. Be merciful to me and answer me. My heart says of you, seek his face. Your face, Lord, I will seek. This is not polished religion. This is personal desperation. David is seeking not just answers, but God's face. It's a cry for relationship, for intimacy, for closeness. Even when he feels distant, even when he's unsure if God is near, David chooses to seek. And perhaps that is the most courageous act of all, to keep seeking God even when he feels hidden. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You have been my helper. Do not reject me or forsake me, God my Savior. Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. Here, David exposes one of the deepest fears we can face: abandonment, rejection by others, even by those closest to us. And yet, he clings to a deeper truth: God will never abandon him. Even if the people we love walk away, even if those we trust turn their backs on us, God will receive us. That promise alone can be a lifeline. Then David turns his plea into a request for guidance. Teach me your way, Lord. Lead me in a straight path because of my oppressors. Do not turn me over to the desire of my foes, for false witnesses rise up against me, spouting malicious accusations. He's not just asking for deliverance, he's asking for direction. It's a humble recognition that he doesn't know everything. He's asking God to lead him, not just out of trouble, but through it with wisdom and clarity. And finally, Psalm 27 ends with a charge, not just to himself, but to all who would listen. I remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart, and wait for the Lord. This is the climax of David's journey. After pouring out fear, faith, longing, and praise, he lands on hope. He doesn't resign himself to despair. He doesn't only look to eternity. He believes that God's goodness will be seen here and now in the land of the living. And so he urges us, wait, be strong, take heart, don't give up. God is working, even when we can't see him. He is moving, even when we feel stuck. He is near, even when we feel alone. Psalm 27 is not just a prayer. It is a blueprint for courage. It reminds us that real strength doesn't come from within. It comes from above. It teaches us to trust in the light when darkness surrounds us. It calls us to seek God not just for what he can do, but for who he is. And it assures us that if we wait on him, really wait, he will renew our strength. So today, if you find yourself weary, afraid, or unsure, remember the power of Psalm 27. Speak it aloud, pray it, live it, and let it draw you into the presence of the one who gives you strength and courage for every battle ahead. When we linger in the final verses of Psalm 27, we find ourselves not at the end of a prayer, but at the beginning of transformation. The words, wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord, are not a passive call to stillness. They are a command to spiritual resilience. Waiting on God is not like waiting in line or waiting for time to pass. It is an act of dependence, a posture of trust, a decision to hold on to faith even when circumstances don't change. This kind of waiting strengthens the soul. It conditions the heart to hope again. David doesn't simply say, be patient. He says, be strong and take heart. Why? Because waiting can wear you down. It can drain your hope. It can cause your faith to tremble. But here, David flips the narrative. Waiting becomes a training ground. In the waiting, strength is forged. In the delay, courage is cultivated. Let's look again at the arc of this psalm. David begins with confidence. The Lord is my light and my salvation. He ends with expectation. I will see the goodness of the Lord. But between these declarations is a valley, a stretch of prayer, pleading, longing, and vulnerability. And that's where many of us live, in the in-between. not yet delivered, but not destroyed, not yet triumphant, but not overcome. And that is exactly where Psalm 27 meets us. This psalm offers us three powerful lessons for our own walk with God. 1. Confidence in God's character is a foundation of courage. David doesn't pretend that the dangers around him aren't real. He talks about enemies, false witnesses, even the potential of being abandoned by those closest to him. But he constantly comes back to who God is: light, salvation, stronghold, helper, receiver, teacher. When you know who God is, you don't have to be dominated by fear. You may still feel afraid, but fear doesn't get the final word. Confidence doesn't come from avoiding battles. It comes from knowing who stands with you in them. 2. Intimacy with God is more precious than immediate rescue. In the center of the psalm, David's tone becomes deeply personal. One thing I ask, to dwell in the house of the Lord, to gaze upon his beauty. Notice, he doesn't ask first for safety or escape. He asks for presence. This reorients us. We often approach prayer as a list of needs. But David teaches us that the highest form of prayer is not just asking God to move on our behalf. It's seeking to know him more deeply. In doing so, our fears lose their grip. His beauty, his nearness, outshines our problems. 3. Courage is sustained by hope in God's future goodness. David doesn't say, I might see or I hope to see. He says, I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. This is bold faith. It's not just faith in God's existence. It's faith in his active, unfolding goodness. Even when life seems dark, even when prayers seem unanswered, even when the road is long, David holds onto a living hope. He teaches us that God's goodness is not limited to heaven. His goodness will be seen here, on earth, in the land of the living. But there's a final, deeper truth in all of this. Psalm 27 doesn't just give us words to recite. It gives us a lens to see life through. It is a psalm for the anxious heart, the weary soul, the one who's been fighting for too long. It invites us to breathe again, to rest in the presence of a God who sees, who shelters, and who never leaves. And it points us forward, not just to peace in our present battles, but to the person of Jesus Christ, who perfectly fulfills every line of this ancient song. Jesus is the light in our darkness. He is the salvation for our souls. He is the stronghold that cannot be shaken. He is the one who was falsely accused, forsaken by men, yet faithful to the end. And he is the one who invites us to come and seek his face, not just in a temple, but in spirit and in truth. When Jesus walked the earth, he didn't avoid fear. He faced it. He didn't bypass suffering. He entered it. And on the night before his greatest trial, he, too, prayed. In a garden, alone, surrounded by betrayal, shadowed by the cross. But like David, he trusted the Father. He waited. He surrendered. And through his resurrection, he proved that waiting on God is never in vain. So when you read Psalm 27 today, read it as more than poetry. Read it as a declaration. Read it as a prayer. Read it as a promise. Whatever you're facing, whether it's fear, rejection, uncertainty, or the weight of waiting, Psalm 27 invites you to lift your eyes. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are not without hope. The Lord is your light and your salvation, the stronghold of your life, the one who will never forsake you, the one who will strengthen you in the waiting, hold you through the storm, and lead you to a place of peace. Be strong. Take heart. Wait for the Lord. And in time, like David, you too will be able to say, I have seen the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. There is a quiet strength in Psalm 27 that continues to unfold the more we meditate on it. It is not just a psalm for a moment of crisis. It is a guide for a lifetime of walking with God. It speaks not only to the fearful heart, but also to the seasoned believer, to the one who has walked with God through battles and blessings and is still waiting for promises to be fulfilled. As we continue to reflect on this powerful passage, it becomes clear that David is not offering empty encouragement. His words are born from real experiences of danger, delayed disappointment, and yet also divine faithfulness. David had been anointed king, yet for years he was hunted like a criminal. He knew the tension between what God promised and what he was presently facing. And so do we. We live in that tension daily, believing in God's promises, yet facing circumstances that seem to contradict them. We've heard that God provides, yet we face financial strain. We've been told he heals, yet sickness lingers. We know he brings peace, yet anxiety whispers in the night. In these moments, Psalm 27 becomes not just comforting, it becomes essential. It gives us a blueprint for how to keep our souls anchored when the world around us shifts. David shows us how to be honest with God without losing hope. He shows us how to name our fears, voice our needs, cry out in desperation, and still end in faith. He doesn't suppress his emotions. He brings them before God. And in doing so, his heart is recentered. This is a vital lesson for us. We often try to manage our fears by ignoring them or drowning them in distraction or pretending they don't exist. But true courage comes when we confront fear with faith. When we say, like David, though an army encamp against me, my heart will not fear. But this strength is not self-generated. It's not found in trying harder or thinking more positively. It's found in relationship. David's strength comes from his nearness to God. Everything in this psalm flows from that center. One thing I ask, to dwell in the house of the Lord. His courage is a byproduct of his communion. This is where the power of Psalm 27 truly comes alive. It teaches us that intimacy with God is the wellspring of strength. Not just knowing about God, not just serving him at a distance, but dwelling with him, sitting in his presence, listening to his voice. When this becomes our deepest desire, everything else begins to take its proper place. David doesn't ask God to change his circumstances first. He asks to see God more clearly in the middle of them. This shift changes everything. When our desire becomes God himself, his presence, his beauty, his voice, we are no longer at the mercy of external outcomes. Our peace no longer depends on things going our way. It becomes rooted in the one who never changes. And then David models something even more profound. He speaks to his own soul. Wait for the Lord. Be strong. Take heart. Wait for the Lord. This is not advice for others. It's a command to himself. He's preaching to his own spirit. He's reminding himself what is true when everything around him feels unstable. This is something we must learn to do. When fear rises, when doubt creeps in, when disappointment knocks, we must speak truth to ourselves. We must remember who God is. We must recall what he has done. We must rehearse his promises. Because faith is not sustained by feelings. It is sustained by truth. And truth must be declared, even in the dark. When David says, wait for the Lord, he's not suggesting resignation. He's encouraging resilience. Biblical waiting is not passive. It's not idle. It's active trust. It's continuing to pray when the answers don't come. It's worshiping when the breakthrough hasn't arrived. It's doing the next right thing with faith, even when the path ahead is unclear. This kind of waiting produces a depth of character that can't be manufactured any other way. It strips us of pride. It deepens our dependence. It prepares us to carry what we've been praying for, not just to receive it, but to steward it well. And so, the psalm ends not with a solution, but with an invitation to trust, to wait, to hope. An invitation to find strength not in what we can control, but in who God is. This is why Psalm 27 has endured through the centuries, why it continues to comfort the grieving, to strengthen the anxious, to inspire the faithful, because it names the full spectrum of human experience: fear, longing, worship, doubt, perseverance, and it points us to God who is steady through it all. If you're walking through a season of uncertainty right now, let this psalm be your prayer. Speak it aloud. Let it shape your responses, not just your reactions. When fear tries to settle in your heart, answer it with, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" When weariness tempts you to give up, remind yourself, "I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living." And when the waiting feels long, when the silence feels loud, take heart. God is not absent. He is forming you, strengthening you, preparing you. Wait for the Lord. Be strong. Take heart. Wait for the Lord. He will not disappoint those who trust in him. He never has, and he never will. When we allow the message of Psalm 27 to truly sink into our hearts, it begins to do a quiet and holy work within us. This is no longer just David's psalm. It becomes our psalm. His cry becomes our cry. His hope becomes our hope. His waiting becomes our own spiritual rhythm. And in this slow, sacred process, Psalm 27 begins to reshape how we see both God and ourselves. The Lord is not just described in this passage as a rescuer from afar, but as a close and personal refuge. The psalm paints God not merely as a powerful force in the heavens, but as a dwelling place, a shelter that welcomes the vulnerable. David's longing to be with God in his temple is not about geography or architecture. It is about intimacy. He is saying, in essence, if I can just be near you, I can face anything. This echoes the deepest longing in every human soul, to be seen, to be safe, to be secure. And this is where God meets us, not just at the altar, not just in the sanctuary, but in the still places of our hearts where fear and faith wrestle. God is not threatened by our questions. He is not distant when we doubt. He is not ashamed of our weakness. In fact, it is in our weakness that his strength is made perfect. This is the very mystery that Psalm 27 begins to uncover. When David admits his need, his fear, his weariness, God meets him with assurance, with strength, with light. The very things David confesses become the places where God reveals his power. There's also a deeper invitation hidden in this psalm, the invitation to real spiritual maturity. Many of us have been taught to measure spiritual growth by how much we know or how well we perform religious duties. But David shows us a different path. Spiritual growth, according to Psalm 27, looks like increasing dependence on God. It looks like choosing to seek God's face above all else. It looks like courage that rises not from self-confidence, but from divine trust. And this courage is not loud or flashy. It does not always look like heroic acts. Often, It looks like quiet endurance, faithfully continuing when no one is watching. It looks like returning to prayer when your heart is heavy, like forgiving when it's painful, like believing when there's still no sign of breakthrough. That is the kind of courage Psalm 27 produces, a courage that holds fast, a courage that endures. The heart of this psalm is also deeply prophetic. David's language points beyond his own circumstances to a greater hope, a Messiah who would one day embody perfect trust in the Father. Jesus lived the reality of Psalm 27 in its fullness. He was surrounded by enemies. He was betrayed by friends. He was falsely accused. He was forsaken by his own people. And yet, he continued to seek the Father's face. Even in the Garden of Gethsemane, sweating blood, overwhelmed with sorrow, Jesus still prayed, "Not my will, but yours be done." This is the ultimate fulfillment of what David longed for, a life completely surrendered to the presence and purpose of God, even through suffering. In Jesus, we see Psalm 27 not only lived out but completed. He is our true light, our eternal salvation, our unshakable stronghold. And now, through him, we are invited into the same relationship David so deeply desired. We are invited not only to dwell with God, but to have God dwell within us. This changes everything. It means we no longer have to wait outside the temple. We have become the temple. The place where God's presence resides is not in a distant building, but in our very being. And so the prayer of Psalm 27 is not just something we lift to God. It is something we live out with him day by day. We learn to dwell in his presence, not just in crisis, but in the everyday rhythms of life. We learn to seek his face, not just when we are desperate, but when things are going well. We learn to wait, not with frustration, but with expectation. And we learn to live a hope that is not dependent on outcomes, but rooted in a person. This is the enduring power of Psalm 27. It gives voice to our fears without feeding them. It gives language to our longing without rushing the process. It gives us a path to walk, even when we cannot yet see the destination. So if you're in a season of delay, let this psalm steady your heart. If you're in a time of warfare, whether physical, emotional, spiritual, let this psalm remind you that God is your fortress. If you're in a time of decision or transition, let this psalm ground you in the clarity of God's way. And if you're simply weary from the weight of life, let this psalm be a place of rest. You are not walking alone. You are not waiting in vain. You are not fighting without help. The God who walked with David walks with you still. The same light that led David out of fear is shining for you. The same stronghold that protected David is still your refuge. And the same presence that David longed for is available to you. Here, now, in this moment, wait for the Lord. Be strong. Take heart. And as you wait, do not lose sight of this. You will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. As we come to the final part of this reflection on Psalm 27, we must pause and consider the depth of what this passage has offered us. It is not merely a collection of verses meant to inspire for a moment. It is a divine framework for living. It is a call to reorient our hearts around something far more stable than circumstance, around the presence, promises, and person of God. The journey through Psalm 27 has been one from confidence to communion, from crisis to courage. David begins by declaring who God is in his life, then opens the raw inner places of fear, longing, and need. But the end of the psalm doesn't simply tie everything together in neat resolution. Instead, It leads us to posture, a way of being with God that requires both strength and surrender. The words, wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord, repeat themselves, not because David forgot what he just said, but because repetition is a language of formation. He's not just telling us what to do, he's showing us how to live, how to breathe through sorrow, how to walk through darkness, how to hope when there's no visible reason to. Waiting, in the biblical sense, is deeply active. It means clinging to God's promises when there's no evidence. It means refusing to give in to despair, even when disappointment looms large. It means continuing to pursue God's presence not for answers, but for the sheer joy of being near Him. This kind of waiting doesn't weaken us. It strengthens us. It builds spiritual muscle that lasts. It teaches us endurance. It trains our hearts to trust God's timing instead of our own. And this is where Psalm 27 completes its work. It turns us into people who can stand strong in storms, not because we are fearless, but because we are held. This is a word for those who are tired of hoping. It's for those who have waited and prayed and stood in faith, and yet the door hasn't opened, the healing hasn't come, the breakthrough hasn't arrived. Psalm 27 tells you, keep going, not because you have to force something to happen, not because you need to fake strength you don't feel, but because the God who was faithful to David will be faithful to you. He sees what you're walking through. He knows the delays that have bruised your confidence. He hears every unspoken prayer, the ones you don't even know how to put into words anymore. And He is not absent. He is not silent. He is not late. He is forming something in you during the waiting that could not be formed any other way. He is building a faith that can outlast disappointment. He is drawing you closer, not to explain everything, but to be everything. And in time, whether suddenly or slowly, you will see His goodness, not only in eternity, but here, in the land of the living, in your daily life, in the restoration of what was broken, in the quiet moments where peace returns to your heart, in the answered prayers that come when you least expect them, in the resilience that grows where there was once only weakness. This is a final gift of Psalm 27. It gives you a place to stand while you wait and a song to sing while you walk. It gives you permission to be honest while still holding on to hope. And it gives you a picture of a God who is not just powerful but present. A God who is not only your rescuer, but your refuge. So let this psalm stay with you. Let it echo in your spirit when life feels uncertain. The Lord is your light when darkness surrounds you. The Lord is your salvation when fear closes in. The Lord is your stronghold when everything else feels unsteady. Seek His face, dwell in His presence, pour out your heart, and trust Him to do what only He can. You will see His goodness. You will experience His faithfulness. You will walk through this season and into the next, held by the one who never lets go. So wait for the Lord. Be strong. Take heart and wait for the Lord. For in the waiting, you are never alone. And in the waiting, His glory is being revealed, both in your life and through your life. Let Psalm 27 not just be something you read, but something you live. And let it be the anthem of your soul. I will not fear. I will seek His face. I will wait for the Lord, and I will see His goodness. Amen.